Hello, hello, hello. Mary Kay Smooth here on Father's Day in 2025. And so I was supposed to come on with my god sister, and she had a another engagement that she had to do. So I'm here by myself, going to talk about Charlie Johnson, my dad. Um, while I do my, the retinol pull, I'll take a backstroke or two. My dad, My dad was one of the good guys. I have to admit it. He always had a positive way to do everything, even when it was adverse. Most of the time, he would come up with an unorthodox move that could really change things. There was a fella that when my dad died, one of his students that called the house here to, convey his condolences. And he said to me, he said, your dad was special. And he said, when I was in junior high school at West Kenny, I used to fight every day with the same kid, every day. And your father got tired of it. He would separate us and everything every day. And he said, so he took us to the little gym. At Daddy's school where he worked in the playground, there was an outside, that little gym, and a big gym. It was an elementary school. So he took them into the little gym and he said, you guys want to fight, right? You fight every day. And I'm just tired of it. So we're gonna fight today. So Daddy took some 30-pound boxing gloves and he put them on their hands and he said, go ahead, fight. And they threw a punch, and 30 pounds on your arms when you're a young, well, they would have been seventh grade. Um, it they were only able to throw a few punches, and then they both fell to the ground and laughed and became best friends to this day. And that's how unorthodox Daddy, his way of doing things was. um my dad in Newark, at the time when he took the Newark teacher's exam, it had to be like 51 maybe. um he became the seventh Black teacher to pass the Newark teacher's exam, first in science. And that was a big hurdle to jump because you had to take a written exam. That part was easy. But then you had to do an oral exam with seven principals in your field. So that meant Daddy had to sit and be questioned by seven principals that were certified in science. So that's what prevented a lot of minority candidates from passing the Newark teachers exam. And it didn't get, the Newark teachers exam did not retire the oral portion until 1968. So from Daddy in 1951 all the way 17 years, you still had to. So there wasn't many Black teachers, especially a young one like Daddy, because if Daddy was born 1927. Okay, so Daddy also worked in the playground. He taught at the school and worked in a playground that was next door to my grandparents' home, his parents. And that house was huge, and it had a wraparound porch. So we could sit on the side porch and look right into the playground, which we did a lot. And when they were playing ball, sometimes the ball would come across the fence. That noise you hear is X. He is playing with a toy right now. So that the nails you hear tapping on the tile. So that playground was known as the salt mines to many. His expertise in basketball and football were well known. My father coached in college. He coached football. He also played basketball and football and tennis in college. Um, and he was an All American football player at Morgan State University. It was Morgan State College then, but now it's Morgan State University, one of the HBCUs. And when Daddy started teaching at the school, there were several families that had young men that would come to the playground, and Daddy started to train young men to use athletic skills to get a free college education. That was his big deal of the day, and he did that from the 50s deep into the 70s. And then the playgrounds were closed in Newark. So they didn't really have a vehicle for him to do it after that. But his teams, especially the basketball, were like mm, some of the best players in the state of New Jersey were from Newark. Yeah. And so Daddy helped them he knew most of the HBCU coaches, so he helped them get into college. And that's what he loved doing, because it was his belief and my grandfather's belief that if you could make a young man into a grown man, you would make a family, because then the father could take care of his family. And with a college education, which is what they pushed during that time, was get education, education, education. Um, so he made a lot of families. And Daddy, my aunt Sis, my dad, my uncle Robert, all my uncles. I have one aunt on my father's side. I had one aunt, and then the rest were boys, and they all were superior at whatever they chose to do. And Daddy, while my grandfather was like the foundation, um, Daddy was the educator. My Uncle Robert became a teacher, and my Aunt Sis became a teacher as well. But Daddy, and in those playgrounds, affected a change in the lives of thousands of boys. Um, and that made me have a lot of brothers that, you know, from another mother. Um, and they're still around, and they're all, most of the guys are doing well because they got that foundation at Cleveland Playground, the salt mines. um Many, sometimes, well, you hear me talk about Mel Knight and George Reynolds. They were very close to our family. Even after the basketball time was over and college was done. And Melvin was a Seton Hall student at the prep and then at the university. And he has two sons that are also ball players. Brevin Knight, who played in the NBA and is now the local commentator for Fox News in Memphis. And Brandon, Melvin's younger son, is the assistant coach for Rutgers University. George Reynolds, he played for University of Houston when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was at UCLA. George played for Houston, and they snapped the 88 game winning streak of John Wooden, who's the famous UCLA coach. And so, I mean, like that. And then Al Addles from the Golden State Warriors would be in the playground. Cleo Hill would be in the playground. There were fine athletes in the playground, and there was a hierarchy. You had to go through levels. See, daddy had a method of doing things uh, to teach you to improve yourself, constantly work on yourself. And when I talk about the little gym, you started outside, and then he would come to you and say, Maria, you getting graduated up to the little gym. And then when you excelled in the little gym, then you got to go to the big gym, and that was the dance. Okay. It was so, my sister and I used to laugh because we got to see a lot of guys move up to the big gym, and it was so exciting for them because that meant they were on a top level of ball playing basketball than we're talking about now. And daddy was so funny, and he was so into everything that as a kid, we had so much fun. My dad was like, they would have skating in the gym, the big gym. Daddy was the pacer, and he would pace the crowd backwards. He would skate backwards. Daddy taught us, the girls, how to twirl a baton. And daddy, he just was, like I said, he has unorthodox ways of doing things. And even with me growing up, when I got in high school, see, my sister's like almost 7 years older than me. So she was in when I was in high school, she was she was getting ready to get out of medical school. So my my dad, we had a little rules because me and mommy weren't getting along. Uh, and I played basketball in high school, and I got a car. First, I got daddy's old Cadillac Eldorado, and then I got a Camaro. And that's how my mother could get me. She could tell me, you can't go to basketball practice or you can't drive, give me the keys. So my father, he was trying to teach me because I would argue with my mother, and my father's in the background going, zip your lips, zip your lips, zip your lips. I'll handle Evelyn if you zip your lips. But I never could zip my lips, guys. Yes, I did. When I finally understood the program, the Charlie Johnson program. So, um, daddy, we had a rule. I tell the truth all the time. My cousin Robin, Uncle Robert's daughter, and one of our friends that played basketball with me, cricket. We hung out, and it only because it was before the energy crisis. We all we needed was $2 each to fill the tank of the Camaro, and we would go places. So sometimes we would get into something because my cousin Robin was really, she would get us we would do stuff, and then when we came back home, we would always go, the routine was go to my house and we'll find out if we're in trouble because my father would sit outside. So we'll go to my house, and Cricket would take off because she was scared of my mother, and she was scared of Aunt Kathy too. So she would run. And so I would tell daddy what happened, right? And then the next part of the program was that I would take Robin home around the corner to Uncle Robert, and I would tell Uncle Robert whatever we did wrong was my fault. I would tell the lie. Then I had to come back home and tell my mother, and then shut up, because then my father would take over. That was difficult sometimes, but his way did work because he handled it for me. Otherwise it was going to be tear stained faces, giving up the keys, or worse. So no basketball practice. That was worse. um so in high school, for me, that's where daddy showed his unorthodox methods, but he showed them to those students, the guys, more than me. And he just, I don't know, he knew how to work things out. Like, there was a young man named Tippy. and Tippy was very smart. Tippy always had a book with him. Well, ball players aren't necessarily the book guys. Some of them are, some of them aren't. So, to keep Tippy from getting teased, Daddy gave him, Tippy liked to eat. Okay. So, Daddy gave him a greasy brown paper bag to put his books in and carry them. So then people thought he had food. Chippy was the tutor for anybody that needed tutoring, but he also was a very good chess player. So next door, my grandmother's house, my grandfather also was a great chess player. So Tippy liked to eat, and my grandmother was a great cook. So Tippy would slip over. Daddy would send him over to my grandmother, and she would feed him, and then he would play chess on the porch with my grandfather, and he tutored the students, and he no longer got teased for having books. He still had his books. So Daddy was just that guy, the teacher that could fix things. So I have some pictures here of Daddy. I'm just gonna flip you guys through a couple so you can see my dad. And this is at Weequahic Park Golf Course, which is near my house. The clubhouse is named after Daddy because later on, when he couldn't play ball anymore, he and his friends started. They got Tiger Woods' dad to come in, and they got the first tee is a Tiger Woods program, and they taught golf to kids in Newark in the park, and the city and the county sponsored it, and they have the clubhouse is named after Daddy. They have a little what do you call it? Um, a 9-course portion of the course for kids. They have a computer lab in the clubhouse, and all of the almost all of the high school teams in Newark practice at Weequahic. So that there you go. And so I'm proud that Daddy has the golf course thing. Um, I'm sorry, I'm still going. I'm going right. I'm doing the Mary Kay thing. Um, but my dad, in college, he was All-American football player, and he was Crown and Scepter, which is like National Honor Society. But that was at the HBCUs. I think they called it Crown and Scepter. He was the class president. He was a founding person of the marching band in college. He was ROTC in college. And then Daddy was one of the first Black National Guardsmen of New Jersey. So my dad was like that guy. I can't tell you anything else. I've always been proud of my dad. And he was just the guy. Now I have something. I gotta get just a portion of it for you guys to hear, but you got to give me. I might have a technical difficulty. I used to tape my dad. I would ask him questions and he would give me answers. I haven't converted a lot of the cassettes into digital, but this one I do. I do have in digital. So hold on, let me see if I got. What's the first thing you can remember about your father, Reverend Bear Johnson?
Well, I think that mostly I can remember my father always had a Buick, and he would take all 5 of his kids in that Buick in the back seat and my mother in the front seat. And we would ride places. For instance, there was a lake close to our house where 20 miles or less, where blacks could go and swim, and they had a pavilion where you could get hot dogs and hamburgers. And my father always made sure that in the summertime that we went there 3 or 4 times, and we would swim, and my mother would bring a basket, and in this basket would be fried chicken and chocolate cake and rolls and potato salad, things for our lunch for that particular day. Then I can remember my father taking us to South Carolina, where my mother's father lived. We'd go there and spend most of the summer, but my father would come back and forth after church on Sunday nights and be with us. And I can remember him sitting down telling us, although I was only 3, 4, 5 years old, about the social climate in our town, places where we could go, places where we should not go. He didn't allow his children to go to any place where you went to buy a hot dog and you had to stand up at the end of the counter and eat it. He would say that you can always go home and your mother will boil you some hot dogs. There were stores that he would tell us that you can't go to buy candy because they did not treat people of color with respect. And I can remember him sitting down at night talking to us about his childhood. One thing in particular I can remember, he said he was a coon dog. He had a coon dog, and he and his father and the local men would go out at night and hunt for coons. And he can remember nights when he had homework to do and he couldn't go, and he could hear the hounds baying in the distance. And I can remember him saying that he said then that, I wish I was a dog. In other words, he wanted to be out there in the middle of things hunting for those coons. And I can remember him talking about his childhood. He finished high school at 14, and he went to Hampton Institute, and he became a farm agent, and he was the youngest farm agent in that area. And he used to grow pumpkins, and he grew a 150-pound pumpkin. He set the record for that area. And he was very knowledgeable about agriculture, and so consequently this made him a very popular person. I can remember him taking us to different churches where he preached. We were little guys, and we would go, and we couldn't go to sleep on the sermon, but we sat very quietly and listened to his sermons, and we can remember how people greeted him when he came, that everybody was always happy because they felt that he was bringing to them a new message, or a message that would help them to survive and endure. I remember him coming to the school. Our school was right across the street from the house when I was, say, 6, 7, and he would come over and visit classes and talk to kids, which he did later, many years later, when I was a teacher. He and the principal and the black superintendent were very close friends, and he was one of the leaders that helped to improve our school climate and our academic procedures. I can remember him being an outstanding dresser. He always had on a tie and a white shirt. Even if he went fishing, he would wear his Sunday attire, type of attire to go fishing. Never saw him without a necktie as a kid. He always had some old beat-up car, and he traded cars every year because they wouldn't last 12 months. And we always looked at that car. We got a new car, although it was an old trade-in that my father had bargained somebody for. He was he knew everybody, and so consequently, wherever we went, everybody knew us, and we were very proud to even be with him. We were proud to be his son because people had high expectations from him and had genuine love and high feelings for him. And as a little boy, he talked to us about what we were going to do in the future. It was implanted in us that you are going to college, so that was automatic when people would ask you.
Okay, I'm going to skip forward um, a little bit. Ooh, where am I at?
At it. And plus sitting with the Secretary of War of the United States, his name was Kenneth Royal. He was from my town, and he never came into town without coming over to visit, as he said, Preacher Johnson, and they would talk. And I was able to meet a lot of college presidents, R.P. Daniels from Shaw University, Mordecai Johnson from Howard University, Dr. J.A. Bay Coates from Benedict College, and I was able to meet many outstanding black men of that day because they knew him. And as a grown man, I sat with him talking to Martin Luther King here in Newark. And he was a very close friend of Martin and his father. So there were there's more than one thing, one particular, there were a lot of things. One moved the other out, and then the civil rights movement in Newark and how hard he worked to get a black judge and how hard he worked to get black policemen in the city and school teachers. And these things, and he did it very quietly. He was not a very vocal man in the sense of being forceful, but he logically explained his feelings, and maybe in most cases he changed other people's minds and hearts.
The question is, what thing or things make you most proud to be the son of B.F. Johnson, and what thing or things do you think he did with excellence?
Number one, I think that the fact that he could measure up to the best, that among his friends were college presidents, doctors, lawyers, and not only that, among his friends were the common lay people, the mechanic, the carpenter, the plumber. He had an aura about him where people could flock to him, and that was part of my life that I wanted to copy from him, to be a man that people would come to and you would be able to share and help them. And the big thing about him, that his life, he didn't live it for himself. He didn't live to be the biggest man out there. He lived to make more other people into the things they wanted to do. Another thing I really liked about him, that he was a leader. He would step forward, and he had no fear of what would happen to him. Here in Newark, he was a new man, and things happened, and he would step forward and let the people know how he felt, and other people would join him, and they would follow him. I think that being a son of B.F. Johnson, knowing that he could compete socially and academically, particularly with the best of whites and blacks, because among his friends was Rabbi Prince, the outstanding Jewish rabbi for this whole area. They were visiting friends, and they shared information together. I can remember as a kid in North Carolina, he shared the pulpit with Reverend Smith, a white minister. Reverend Smith would preach at our church on a certain Sunday. My father was at his church, and that was way before, quote, desegregation. And I think his community activity where he uh, did things to make schools better or to make housing better or to get jobs. I can remember that blacks were redlined in Newark. They couldn't get mortgages, and he went to a savings bank downtown and he arranged for people to come down and get mortgages, and then all of a sudden people, black people in his church particularly, started to buy houses. He had a buy a house a month campaign, and these people were able to get their mortgages through, and so many people were able to put their families in their own homes. And I can remember him sitting before the city council with problems or before the mayor with problems, and he would come out not with a victory, but they solved. They came to some agreement, and it was always beneficial to the cause that he espoused.
Next.
Okay. So you kind of, if you didn't know Daddy, now you even heard him. And he took a lot of the things that worked for my grandfather and put them to work in his teaching field because Daddy stayed in his lane. He didn't want to be a preacher like his father. He wanted to be a teacher. He really wanted to be a doctor, but in that time there were not many black medical schools, and so that cut down the numbers that could get in. But Daddy was able to become a teacher and stay in his lane, and he made that lane his own. And he innovated how he could teach his students not just education but life, and it worked. It worked for many. So you could see I'm getting misty, so I gotta turn this off before I go full fledged. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers that are watching. Um, and if you can, and you're not a father, try to help a young man become a full grown man and make a family. That's what I'll say. Closing off. Mary Kay Smooth's going to sign off because she getting ready to cry, and I don't want to do that.